This is a breaking update regarding the situation on I-35. Unfortunately, the situation is escalating far
faster. He's accused of driving his tractor trailer while high on meth and with 2 young children in the cab. And tonight he's accused of driving his tractor trailer while high on.
They called it a routine equipment upgrade. A single replacement camera mounted above Bay 3 at the Laredo North Way Station on Interstate 35. Nobody was supposed to notice. Nobody was supposed to care. But when that camera came online on a Tuesday morning in October and its encrypted feed routed directly into a DHS digital monitoring node, rather than the state transportation server it was supposed to connect to, what federal analysts saw in the next 72 hours would unravel the largest ground-based narcotics pipeline ever discovered on American soil. $1.3 billion, one surveillance camera, and a trail that ran all the way from the desert floor of the Texas-Mexico border straight into the executive office of the man responsible for every way station, every inspection bay, and every commercial truck corridor in the entire state of Texas. If you think you know how deep corruption can go, stay with this story, because it goes deeper. It started the way most catastrophic discoveries do, not with a dramatic tip, not with a whistleblower walking into a field office. It started with a number that did not match. On October 14th at 6:47 in the morning, a DHS data analyst named only in federal filings as Agent Reyes flagged an anomaly in way station throughput logs on the Interstate 35 corridor between Laredo and San Antonio. Commercial trucks were clearing the Laredo North facility at an average of 11 minutes per vehicle during what should have been peak inspection hours. The federal standard for a full level 2 DOT inspection at a busy border-adjacent station is 31 minutes minimum. 11 minutes for 18-wheelers coming directly from the Mexican border. That is not efficiency, that is clearance. Someone had been telling those trucks they were fine before anyone opened a door. Agent Reyes flagged the data and forwarded it to a joint FBI and DEA intelligence desk in San Antonio. By noon, 2 analysts were pulling archive throughput records going back 18 months. What they found turned a data anomaly into a federal emergency. Across the Laredo North, Laredo South, Eagle Pass, and Del Rio way stations, there were 4,200 documented instances of commercial vehicles receiving expedited clearance codes during specific pre-dawn and late-night windows. Always the same windows, always the same corridors. And when analysts cross-referenced those timestamps against CBP sensor logs and DHS ground radar data near the Nuevo Leon and Tamaulipas border crossings, the pattern locked into place like a vault door closing. Those windows corresponded exactly with known Sinaloa Cartel convoy departure times documented in DEA field intelligence going back to 2021. This was not coincidence. This was a schedule. Someone on the American side of that border was running a timetable for the Sinaloa Cartel, and they had been doing it for almost 2 years without a single federal interdiction. By October 16th, the FBI had opened a full counter-narcotics investigation under the codename Operation Iron Meridian. The name fit. A meridian is a line that runs straight through the heart of something, and that is exactly what this was, a straight line. A pipeline of drugs, cash, and human cargo running directly up the spine of the American interstate system through Texas, and it had been operating with the precision of a logistics corporation because, in every meaningful sense, that is exactly what it was. The replacement camera at Laredo North Way Station Bay 3 captured everything. In the first 72 hours of its DHS-routed feed, federal analysts logged 14 separate commercial truck convoys that entered the inspection bay, received a green light clearance code without a secondary inspection, and exited onto Interstate 35 northbound in under 9 minutes. They watched a crew cab pickup with Tamaulipas commercial plates pull alongside 2 of those trucks at the fuel island adjacent to the station, exchange sealed document pouches with the drivers, and then return across the border crossing bridge without ever stopping at a checkpoint. They watched a way station employee in a reflective vest walk directly to a terminal inside Bay 3, enter a code, and override the secondary inspection queue for 3 consecutive trucks at 3:14 in the morning. They watched it happen with the clinical regularity of a factory floor, and every frame of that footage was timestamped, encrypted, and transmitted directly to the federal evidence server in San Antonio before anyone at the station knew they were being watched. On October 19th, federal prosecutors in the Western District of Texas signed the first sealed grand jury subpoenas. By October 22nd, the FBI Cyber Forensics Division had obtained emergency authorization to mirror the internal server architecture of the Texas State Department of Transportation's Way Station Data Management System. What they found inside that server architecture was the second level of the operation, and it was where Iron Meridian stopped being a drug interdiction case and became something that made senior FBI officials go quiet in their briefings. Inside the TXDOT server network, cyber forensics analysts discovered a shadow administrative partition. It had been built inside the legitimate server infrastructure using credentials belonging to a decommissioned maintenance account from 2019. Someone had kept that account alive, kept it invisible to the agency's own IT auditors, and had been using it to push modified inspection protocol commands to weigh station terminals at Laredo North, Laredo South, Eagle Pass, and Del Rio for 22 months. The commands were subtle. They did not eliminate inspections. They adjusted them. They shortened inspection windows, reclassified certain truck manifests as pre-cleared agricultural cargo, and quietly removed specific vehicle identification numbers from the secondary inspection trigger list. To any auditor reviewing the system from the outside, the stations looked operational. They were processing trucks. They were generating inspection logs. The logs just happened to be for trucks that had already been waved through. The paper was real, but the shadow partition was only the beginning. Embedded within it was a second layer of encrypted file architecture that took the FBI Cyber Division 48 hours and a court-authorized decryption protocol to crack. When the encryption finally broke on the morning of October 24th, analysts found themselves looking at what the lead forensics supervisor later described in court filings as the most comprehensive narcotics logistics database ever seized from a domestic source. The file system was labeled internally as Proyecto Corredor, Project Corredor. It contained 18 months of operational records, convoy manifests, truck VIN numbers cross-referenced with driver contact codes, way station clearance windows synchronized with Sinaloa Cartel supply chain departure logs, financial routing tables showing commission payments distributed through a network of 14 shell companies registered across Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada, and the Cayman Islands. Shell companies with names like Lone Star Agricultural Holdings, LLC, Trans-Meridian Freight Solutions Corp., and Southwest Green Infrastructure Partners. On the surface, every single one of them looked like a legitimate mid-sized Texas business. Every one of them had a website. Every one of them had a registered agent. And every single one of them traced back through a layered structure of nominee directors and proxy ownership chains to a single executive authorization signature. The digital key of the Texas State Transportation Commissioner, a man named in federal documents as Commissioner Harlan Deuce Whitmore, appointed 3 years ago. Confirmed unanimously by the state legislature, a man described in his official biography as a 30-year veteran of Texas infrastructure policy, with a lifelong dedication to the safe and efficient movement of commerce across the great state of Texas. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. This is not negligence. This is engineered treason. And it gets worse from here. Whitmore's digital fingerprints were on everything. His encrypted authorization key appeared as the originating credential on 847 separate override commands pushed to border way station terminals over the course of 18 months. His signature appeared on the founding documents of 6 of the 14 shell companies, buried under 3 layers of proxy ownership, but recoverable through financial forensics. His personal encrypted communication account, registered under a dummy identity on a dark web messaging platform, appeared in Proyecto Corredor as the primary American side contact for a Sinaloa Cartel logistics coordinator identified in DEA intelligence files under the alias El Administrador. The Administrator. The title was not poetic, it was literal. El Administrador was the cartel's freight and routing specialist, the man responsible for synchronizing Sinaloa's cross-border supply chain with its American distribution network, and Harlan Whitmore had been his counterpart. His mirror, the Administrator on the American side of the line. Together, they had turned the Interstate 35 and Interstate 10 truck corridors through Texas into the most efficient narcotics pipeline in the Western Hemisphere. Analysts estimated the network had moved a conservatively calculated minimum of 34 metric tons of cocaine, 11 metric tons of methamphetamine, and more than 140 million fentanyl pills through Texas way stations during the 18-month operational window documented in Proyecto Corredor. 1,400 pounds of fentanyl pills alone. At street distribution value, the total narcotics throughput of the pipeline exceeded $1.3 billion. 1 surveillance camera, 1 replaced piece of equipment in Bay 3 at Laredo North, and the entire architecture of a billion-dollar cartel pipeline running through the veins of the American heartland came into the light. What you need to understand is what those trucks actually looked like on the outside. This is important. These were not unmarked panel vans. These were legitimate commercial carriers, refrigerated freight trucks with the logos of grocery distribution companies on their sides, flatbed haulers carrying wrapped industrial equipment, tanker trucks with agricultural chemical manifests. Some of them were subcontracted through real companies whose managers had no idea their vehicles had been compromised. The Sinaloa Cartel had inserted coordinated drivers into the legitimate commercial trucking ecosystem. using fraudulent CDL credentials and hijacked freight contracts, and their trucks had been indistinguishable from the hundreds of thousands of real commercial vehicles that move through Texas border corridors every single day. That is the genius and the horror of it simultaneously. The pipeline did not hide from the system. It became the system. It wore the system's uniform. ACHA carried the system's paperwork and used the system's own administrative infrastructure to wave itself through. Without that camera, without that one data anomaly on a Tuesday morning in October, it could have continued for another decade. At 4:18 in the morning on November 3rd, Operation Iron Meridian entered its kinetic phase. Across the state of Texas, more than 1,400 federal agents from the FBI, DEA, ICE, DHS, Homeland Security Investigations, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection executed simultaneous arrest warrants, search warrants, and asset seizure orders at 71 locations. The command center was a converted federal facility south of San Antonio, where 24 supervisory agents watched a digital operations map, with red markers pulsing at sites from El Paso to Houston, from Laredo to Dallas, from Odessa to Corpus Christi. The Black Hawk helicopters from the Texas DPS Air Operations Division operated under federal coordination, maintained air surveillance corridors over the HE-35 and I-10 routes as ground units moved. U.S. Border Patrol tactical units with armored support vehicles sealed all 4 compromised way stations. The Texas National Guard had been placed on standby coordination status at the request of the FBI special agent in charge, though their primary role was logistics and perimeter support rather than direct law enforcement action. Nobody was told everything. That was intentional, because what Iron Meridian's investigators had uncovered in the 2 weeks between the server seizure and the operational phase was not just a narcotics pipeline, it was a parallel enforcement infrastructure. And parts of it were still operational inside rooms where law enforcement badges were worn every day. The raids hit simultaneously across the full network. In a warehouse district on the south side of San Antonio, DEA and SWAT teams breached a refrigerated freight storage facility at 4:18 a.m. and found 2.3 metric tons of cocaine vacuum sealed inside industrial food packaging crates, along with 4.1 million fentanyl pills distributed across modified commercial food storage containers. The facility had passed its last state health inspection 14 months prior. The inspector's report had noted no violations. In a truck maintenance yard outside Laredo, ICE tactical units detained 16 individuals and seized 3 semi-trucks whose chassis had been structurally modified with concealed hydraulic compartments, capable of holding up to 800 kilograms of narcotics in spaces invisible to standard inspection protocols. In a storage unit complex outside Eagle Pass, agents found a communication server farm, 6 laptops, 2 encrypted satellite uplink devices, and what federal prosecutors later described as a complete operational archive of the American side of Proyecto Corredor going back to its inception, including direct message logs between Whitmore's encrypted identity and El Administrador that detailed specific adjustments made to way station inspection algorithms on dates that corresponded to the largest confirmed cartel convoy movements in the entire 18-month record. In a gated residential community in the hill country west of Austin, FBI agents arrested Harlan Deuce Whitmore at 4:31 in the morning. He was in his kitchen. He was wearing a bathrobe. He did not say a word when agents placed the handcuffs on him. According to the FBI agent who made the arrest, Whitmore looked at the warrant, looked at the lead agent, and simply nodded once, as if he had known this particular morning was coming and had simply been waiting to see how long he had. By 6 a.m., 63 of the 71 target locations had been secured. 8 additional individuals were taken into custody in secondary sweeps through the morning. Among those arrested were 4 Texas Department of Transportation employees with administrative access to the way station server system, 2 of whom held supervisory positions. 3 Texas Department of Public Safety officers assigned to commercial vehicle enforcement were arrested on charges related to the falsification of inspection records and the receipt of payments traceable to the Proyecto Corredor shell company network. A state legislative aide from a Texas House committee with oversight jurisdiction over transportation infrastructure was arrested at an apartment in Austin and charged with wire fraud and conspiracy for his role in shielding a proposed audit of TXDOT way station operations that, federal documents alleged, had been deliberately delayed twice at Whitmore's request through legislative back channels. What Iron Meridian's investigators were looking at was not simply a corrupt official with a side arrangement with the drug cartel. What they were looking at was a purpose-built second tier of the Texas transportation enforcement system, designed from the inside by Whitmore and run in parallel to the real one, staffed by compromised officers who served the cartel's logistics needs the same way their badge-wearing counterparts served the public. A shadow department of transportation. a second enforcement architecture operating inside the real one like a parasite that had grown large enough to move the host. Honest agents who had worked alongside compromised colleagues for years sat in the San Antonio command center in the hours after the raids and could not speak. They had been outmaneuvered inside their own agencies and their own professional lives by people who wore the same uniform and attended the same briefings and answered the same radio channel. The betrayal of that is not something that resolves quickly. The financial architecture investigators uncovered in the weeks following the raids completed the picture of the operation's true scale. The 14 shell companies traced to Whitmore's authorization had processed a combined total of $312 million in laundered cartel revenue over the documented operational period. The money moved through layered commercial transactions, trucking subcontracts, fake green energy consultation fees, and fraudulent agricultural commodity trades, transitioning from Cayman Islands accounts through Nevada, holding companies into Texas real estate purchases, equipment financing firms, and a chain of truck stop and fuel depot businesses along the I-35 and I-10 corridors, some of which had also served as cash collection nodes for the pipeline's operational payroll. The fuel depots were particularly important. They functioned simultaneously as legitimate truck stop businesses, as cartel cash processing points, and as logistical waypoints where convoy drivers could receive updated clearance codes, switch out documentation, and transfer narcotics to secondary distribution vehicles for the last legs of their routes, deeper into Texas and beyond. Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Denver. The pipeline's northern reach extended well past Texas state lines, and Iron Meridian's investigators had already opened coordination channels with FBI field offices in 6 additional states by the time the November raids concluded. What had started at a single way station camera had traced a distribution web that touched nearly a third of the continental United States. The human cost of what moved through those trucks does not live in seizure statistics. It lives in the communities that absorb the product at the other end of the pipeline. Every year, fentanyl kills tens of thousands of Americans. Every year, methamphetamine destroys families, communities, and futures in cities and rural towns across this country. The drugs that moved through the Proyecto Corredor network were not abstract quantities in a federal evidence manifest. They were the supply chain for overdoses, for addiction treatment programs overwhelmed beyond capacity, for parents identifying their children in hospital morgues, for towns where the obituary column in the local paper runs longer than the sports section. Harlan Whitmore did not manufacture those drugs. He did not inject them or press them into pills, but he built and maintained the infrastructure that moved them in industrial quantities into the country, and he was paid very well to do it. And he did it for nearly 2 years while attending ribbon cuttings for new highway interchanges and testifying before legislative committees about the importance of safe and efficient Texas commerce. Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it only requires silence and ambition and the willingness to reduce human lives to line items in a logistics spreadsheet. Federal prosecutors filed a 47-count indictment against Whitmore in the Western District of Texas, including charges of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering conspiracy, wire fraud, obstruction of justice, and violation of federal statutes related to the corruption of transportation inspection infrastructure. 16 additional individuals from the TXDOT server manipulation network, the compromised DPS officers, and the shell company management structure faced charges ranging across similar categories. El Administrador, the Sinaloa Cartel logistics coordinator on the Mexican side, was identified in the indictment under his documented alias and remains the subject of an active federal extradition request. Or operations targeting the broader Sinaloa network infrastructure across the other 6 states, where Iron Meridian's investigative threads had extended, were described in subsequent press materials from the DOJ as ongoing, and additional arrests were anticipated. The Texas State Department of Transportation announced a full audit of way station server architecture and inspection protocols across all facilities. An independent federal monitoring team was assigned to oversee the process. The compromised inspection terminals at Laredo North, Laredo South, Eagle Pass, and Del Rio were taken offline, fully examined and rebuilt from uncorrupted system images under direct FBI supervision. The shadow administrative partition was forensically documented as evidence and then permanently excised. Bay 3 at Laredo North Way Station got its camera back. This one routes to both the state server and a permanent federal monitoring node that is not going anywhere, because the lesson of Operation Iron Meridian, if there is a single clean sentence that contains it, is this: the most dangerous infrastructure vulnerabilities in this country are not technical. They are human. They are the people entrusted with authority over the systems that keep the country moving, and the only deterrent that has ever consistently worked against them is the presence of someone, somewhere. watching carefully enough to notice when 11 minutes does not match 31. If you are still watching this story, press like so that more people see what a billion-dollar drug pipeline actually looks like when it's finally dragged into the light. Comment the word Meridian below if you believe that political corruption in law enforcement and transportation infrastructure deserves more investigative attention than it receives. And share this story because the towns at the end of this pipeline are still there, and the families who lost someone to what moved through those way stations deserve to know that the people responsible were found.